there was no guidance really to any of us as far as what we should do. So I created a YouTube channel, and it was Coffee with Monica. And I stood in my yard with my, I got a little stick camera because that's what we all did in COVID. And I had my little yellow cup of coffee, and I just talked to them like I did before and said, like, here's the things you're going to read about in your textbook. And here are some real life examples of some of the things that I could find. So we did like major like farm tours of things and took students, on adventures in the tractor or, with baby sheep.
Just heard Monica Reis-Bergen from James Madison University in Harrisonburg, Virginia. Garth and guest host Jane Halonen from the University of West Florida interviewed Monica as part of the Psych Sessions 2023 East Coast Tour for episode 183 of Psych Sessions, Conversations about Teaching and Stuff.
Psych Sessions is sponsored by W.W. Norton. Are you looking for more activities to promote scientific literacy? ZAPS 3.0 interactive labs from W.W. Norton are brief, hands-on activities that invite students to actively participate in the process of psychological research and discovery. Utilizing a consistent 5-part framework and incorporating transparent design principles, students experience classic psychological studies like the Stroop effect, false memory, the serial position effect, signal detection, and more. Once they've completed the experiment, students can compare their data with national data and their own classmates, offering the opportunity for rich in-class or online discussions. Bring the science of psychology to life for your students with ZAPS. For Psych Sessions listeners new to ZAPS, you can try it for free the next time you teach. Just go to siegel.wwnorton.com/Psych Sessions, and the folks at W.W. Norton will even integrate it into your LMS for you. That is Siegel, like the bird, SEAGULL.wwnorton.com/Psych Sessions. The Psych Sessions podcast is sponsored by STP. That is the Society for the Teaching of Psychology. That's APA Division 2. You can find them at teachpsych.org. The views or product endorsements expressed do not represent the views, support, or endorsements of STP. Psych Sessions is so grateful to have STP as a long-term supporter. Psych Sessions is proud to partner with Macmillan Learning. At Macmillan Learning Psychology, content matters, and these days, digital content matters more than ever. Macmillan Learning's Achieve elevates interactive teaching and learning with an extraordinary range of online course content in a powerful yet easy-to-use platform. Interactive ebooks, innovative assessments, engaging videos and activities, helpful instructor resources. Achieve brings it all together and makes it easy for you to find what you need and what you want. See for yourself. Go to macmillanlearning.com/Psych Sessions for an introductory tour today. Macmillan's Achieve for Psychology, engaging every student, supporting every instructor, setting the new standard for teaching and learning. Jane, you and I just listened to that little intro, that little teaser, and you were smiling the whole time. You hadn't heard it. I just showed it to you. Why does Monica make you smile?
Monica made me smile from the moment I met her, which was in her job interview. It was my pleasure to hire her in her first academic job. She is charming. She is funny. She is real. And as she likes to say, she's an Iowa farm girl. I like to say she's never met a metaphor she didn't like. She just is a joy to be around, and it really came across in the interview. I was delighted with it.
I was so excited to meet her for the first time because you talked so highly about her, and she didn't disappoint. She's the kind of person, after meeting her, that I just feel like I wish I had more teachers in my past like her. And I kind of want to be like her. When she talks about the things that she does in the class, the way that she thinks about students, the care she has for students, I love it. It's such a model to the rest of us, and folks are going to hear that in this interview. Does that stuff stick out and resonate with you?
It does. And I think in particular, the common thread that extends throughout all of her work is how much she stresses the building of community, whether it's in classrooms, whether it's helping students solve problems, or whether it's working with faculty to overcome whatever challenges they have. So I think this will be an interesting and informative and maybe role modeling experience for people who listen to Monica.
Well, with that, folks, we'll let you get to the interview. This is Monica Reis-Bergen. Welcome to another episode of Psych Sessions. This is Garth. I am on a road trip with Jane Halonen, and she's here with me. Hi, Jane.
Hi.
And we are at James Madison University, which is a special place to Jane, and I'm sure you'll talk to us a little bit about that. But we are here to interview Monica Reis-Bergen, the assistant department head in the Department of Psychology here at JMU in Harrisonburg, Virginia. And Jane, what's it like to be back here? I know you've come back over
a couple times.
Yeah. But how is it to walk around these hallways?
It's weird. I've been gone for 20 years. Maybe a little more, 20 years. I was here for 5 years as the director of School of Psychology, but it was in a different building, the building next door, Johnston Hall. We're now sitting in Miller Hall, which is alien to me. And recognizing that being gone 20 years, a lot of the faculty that I worked with have moved into retirement, and I don't recognize a lot of the names on the roster, so that's kind of weird.
Well, I'm glad that you all could get together. By the way, I've dropped my chair now so that I can be in line with the microphone, and so I feel very small compared to both of you. We'll just put that out there. But Monica, welcome to this conversation, and we're so happy to have you on the podcast.
Well, thank you. I'm delighted to be here. I'm delighted to see Jane here in Harrisonburg and to meet you as well.
Fantastic. Jane, you were like, we're going to interview Monica when we go.
Yeah.
Talk to me.
When we decided that we were going to do this road trip, we were figuring out the places that we were going to go, and we knew that JMU has, I think, a well-deserved reputation for high-quality teaching. We knew, for example, that we wanted to go back and pick up some people who had retired, like Ginny Matthey. And as we were filling out the roster, it was just obvious to me that one of the people I wanted to talk to was Monica. I believe I hired her a while ago.
Absolutely.
And she was pretty impressive right from the beginning. Not just because she's a good teacher, but she has an unusual sense of humor that comes through in a lot of what she does. And so I just thought if anyone would give us some interesting tidbits about teaching life, it would be Monica.
I see Monica shaking her head like, no, not interesting, not funny. Yeah. So buckle in, folks. It's going to be a boring podcast interview. That's great.
Yeah, maybe we could start by tell us about the courses that you are currently teaching. What courses do you teach?
Okay, so currently in person, I teach psychology of personality. I also occasionally, when they need me, teach capstone on addictive behaviors. I teach the peer advising class, which is a year-long experience where students kind of help our students in the major. They also learn about psychology. And then I team taught it with Kevin Apple for a while, and we created some crazy projects like learning biases and things like that. So that's a fun class. Ashton Trice, who you got to talk to a little bit ago, when he retired, I took over his class in the middle of the semester. So I taught the second half of a research methods class. I just finished my online health psychology class. That about covers it.
That's a lot of different classes that you teach.
Yeah, I always have. And that's something that I think Jane created when she was here. Like, if you're going to appreciate the curriculum, you really need to know and teach in every part of the curriculum. So, if you teach 101, which I have, 211 research methods, I teach core personality and then capstone. You really know what the students remember or don't remember.
Do you have a favorite of those classes, the one that you most look forward to teaching?
Ooh, no.
Okay.
Oh, I also taught field placement for years. I teach whatever they need me to teach. I think that if you use baseball terms, Jane's been waiting for a metaphor. So here it is. You can think of faculty as having specializations. So like you're the pitcher. So you spend all your time caring about pitching, or you're the first baseman or first base person. Anyway, I would be the utility player. So you need me here, right field, here I go. You need me at second base, I go to second base. That requires a lot of diverse skills, a lot of different kinds of opportunity, but also takes somebody that's, likes the challenge. Because you should call your utility player when your main player is sick, ill, screwed up. Here I go.
Well, also your utility player has to be pretty talented. I mean, also patient, but also talented to be able to be that kind of flexible to move into situations like that.
Yeah, flexible. I mean, talented kind of, sometimes those last minute things were not always my best work the first time, but,
What was the worst last minute situation that you got called in for? Do you remember?
Oh, yeah. The worst one ever.
The worst one ever.
Ever was, and it turned out well in the end, but it was like April, I think, and Michael Stoloff asked me to take over field placement. And I'm a social psychologist.
Well, there's a connection between social psychology and what students would be doing in field placement, right?
In Western State Clinical Mental Health Hospital, Joanne
so
Grayson
strictly
was
clinical kinds of stuff?
No, there were, wide variety of different kinds of placements.
Okay.
But I was very scared, because, Joanne had kind of scared me. You could be sued. Your students could do terrible things. I don't have a clinical background.
No.
So it was like, okay.
Wait, who scared you with that?
Joanne Grayson.
Okay. I just want to put that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The person who taught that class, and I have to say, and was a legend in teaching that class in field placement. Yeah.
Yeah. I had to what kind of insurance do I need? That kind of thing. Yeah.
Was this kind of a fun conversation where she's giving you a hard time? Hey, get all these things in order. This is a different sort of class. Or was it really with warning, these kinds of things can happen and you really need to take care of business before you start teaching this course?
Okay. So Jane can appreciate this comment, and I love Joanne, and she may someday listen to this, but I literally moved my office next to her office so that I could be pretty much daily mentored if needed. I received all of her binders, mounds of binders.
Lots of them.
Lots of binders. Yeah. I received very close attention to make sure that I did not screw up, because she would, she, chose to retire, but she cared deeply for field placement. So I read a lot of things and scared myself silly over the summer, and then came into the fall. And the one thing I do well would be make relationships. So I basically took a little road tour to all of the little field placement sites to shake their hands and say, hi, I'm Monica. I'm not Joanne. Help me help you. We're going to have students here. And, what do you need from me on my end to make these students successful? So we, created good partnerships, but it was outside of my comfort zone.
How many placement sites would you have visited in that capacity?
Oh, 24.
Oh, I thought it might be that bad.
Yeah, all over. Went down to Stanton, different places. And of course, things happen in these sites that, if you're just teaching a class in 15 weeks, you're not so worried. But, oh, yeah, this site closed in the middle of the semester, because who really cares about semesters outside of academia?
No one.
Mm-hmm. So things like that, background checks. I learned a lot about that kind of thing, and, scared all my students silly about Facebook and social media forever.
Thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. But it was just, when I said, oh, sure, because I'm an oh, sure kind of person, that was a little more than I expected.
That was a great example.
Yeah.
What's it like to have an oh, sure person in the department? I'm not an oh, sure person. I'm like a twist my arm sort of person.
No, you're not.
I am. Within my department,
within your department?
Yeah,
okay.
When it comes to classes that I am just either not trained to teach or maybe not interested to teach for whatever reason, it's twist my arm, I'm not an OSHR person in that case. So, but you need those folks in a department. And now you're in this kind of assistant head position. Do you find that, are people as open? And I know your folks, your colleagues could be listening to this. So are people as open as you are to assignments? And
that's a tricky question.
Well, it's not though. Jane's shaking her head no.
She's shaking her head no, but I really think that this is one of those places where in many ways you can lead by example. The other thing that I do is I have a lot of honor students, and I'm like, if I can manage this load and take an honor student, a lot of times they're like, okay, well, I probably can too. For a while, we had just a huge number. And, unfortunately, you can't really you can say no, but it's a real hard no in that case.
Can I just clarify? Because things differ in different universities, but very often if you're supervising an honor student doing a thesis, for example, that doesn't exactly get reflected in credit for what you do. It's more that experience you can do it in a variety of different ways. Okay. So you can have a research team, and an honor student, but you try to create balance. Mm-hmm. And my balance is different than other people's balance, but I think that also means I might take that student so Monica doesn't have 4, for example. So sometimes being the OSHR person does help me because they're like, oh, I'm going to help Monica by taking on this extra responsibility. Well,
Yeah.
I think the reason that I was shaking my head vigorously is I'm saying this as an ex-chair and an ex-dean, most faculty envision their academic life being, here's my course, I'm going to teach this and refine this forever, and I'm going to be happy. And the reality is that when you're delivering a full curriculum, things happen. And so you do count on the utility players to step up. And I'm going to say that the utility players are few and far between. Yeah. Partly because people are so committed to the subdisciplines that they've studied so hard. So grateful to all the utility players out there, and a tip of the hat to those who are, because they really keep the department functioning.
Yeah, I think about, I'm in a 2-person department, very small, but my colleague Seraphine, she is an yes sort of person, and I find myself inspired by it and trying to be more flexible to model. And she's modeling for me what it's like to have a good colleague. And so I appreciate that. But I do think that you all at your level, at the dean level, which Jane's done before, at the department head, assistant department head position, you must see all kinds. Here's what my question is: what's your take on collegiality and flexibility? Is it just like I would imagine, like in a group of people, you're going to get some people who are more or less flexible, and how does that contribute to the feel of the department?
That's an interesting question.
Yeah, strategically, how do you have to prepare yourself to work with those variable levels of flexibility?
Yeah, I mean, as you think about that, I'm going to say the first thing that came to my mind was not my colleagues, but rather thinking about what it's like to be a student coming back after COVID. And I feel like that's been one of the places of creating that community in the classroom. So what do we as faculty intentionally do so that the students in your class feel like they can ask someone for notes? Because, asking you to teach the class is not the same as asking somebody for notes in their class, but hey, the behaviors are kind of similar. So how do I try to create that community in my classes? And then how can we carry that over to department meetings, to department interactions, to things like that? And I think community is hard, and I think it's different now.
How do you think it's different?
Well, I mean, it's... I look at you and I remember what it was like in the department when you were the director, and just the way that faculty interacted was very much like we were all in our offices, and we had events, and we had luncheons, and we had
surprise parties,
dances, and theme parties.
Oh yes, we shared many dances, didn't we?
Danced. We had theme parties. You know, of course, the scrapbooker who I could name, Joanne out there, another Joanne, reminded me this weekend. You know, it's just a very different time now. For example, I connected with 4 faculty this morning just on my phone. Yeah. So Kevin says hi. Just with text messaging. So I know where they are. I'm going to meet them for coffee later, but it's not that kind of in-person connection. And so trying to create communities of group chats with faculty seems strange, but at the same time, that's a great way to keep connected with life events, with the kinds of things that we shared in person now with people not in the building.
I think pre-COVID, the expectation was that you would be on campus in your office in a more regular work schedule. And so many places now combine online assignments with in-person assignments, and that pretty much decimates department culture because no one is around. So I think that has an adverse effect on community.
When my second teaching job really was at Highline College just south of Seattle. And it was, they ran 4-day a week. It was quarter system, 4-day week classes or 5-day week classes. I think there was an option, and only Sue Franz taught like a Tuesday, Thursday, like one section of intro that was more flexible for students, who needed to work or whatever. But that was really my introduction to higher education and working in a department. And then I moved over to Cascadia College, and they had basically a Monday, Wednesday, and Tuesday, Thursday schedule for classes. And as soon as I got there, I thought, oh, this is so different. My colleagues aren't here. We're just passing each other in hallways sometimes if you're lucky. And then, but there was all these back channel conversations about people need to be on campus. They need to be in their offices for the culture of the, and they weren't wrong, but what we valued was the flexibility, or what I valued of it was the flexibility, but you give up that collegiality and just FaceTime. And then when the pandemic hit, it was like what people were hoping, I think actually people wanted flexibility, and what they were hoping for, actually happened. So now, people aren't talking about why aren't you in your office more. That sort of those kind of that desire to hold on to the collegiality of the past. It's, as far as I can tell, it's not there, at least not to the extent it was, because the world's changed.
Yeah.
Do you see that we get back to where you were years ago when Jane was here, or is this just the new? Is this the new normal that we have to build on?
Are we stuck?
Or we need to come up with more innovative things like text messaging groups or Slack groups or whatever?
Gosh, I don't know. I mean, I think everything is constant change. I mean, so I don't think we'll ever go back to the past, and some of those things we probably shouldn't. That's okay. I think it will just continually evolve. But I do think it shapes the next generation to see what we do to kind of match into, is this what I want to do? And I think that's the kind of tricky part of, as we teach and do research, and if they see us as an island or working primarily out of our house, when they're thinking about being a college professor or doing research, are we going to then select those students that say, hey, you know what? I don't really want to interact with people for more than 50 minutes with a prepared speech or something like that. Mm-hmm. Or are we getting those, people who are like, I'm so excited to work collaboratively on a team if nobody sees the teams in action? And so that could have a real impact on our field for a long time.
Yeah.
In one of the interviews that we conducted recently, someone mentioned that if he were in an advising position, he would not encourage people to become college teachers because the nature of college teaching has evolved so dramatically. Are you optimistic about college teaching as a future for students who are talented? Or
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I love it as much now as I did 20 some years ago.
Okay.
I might even like it more. I think. And just to the degree of, I think the challenge of helping them navigate not just the material, but helping them navigate like working with other people and creating community has been kind of a fun challenge for me. Like, you know, look to the right, look to the left, shake their hand, ask them where they're from, ask them what they want to do. You might get a job from this person. This person might work with you sometime in the future. And how do we create that community in our classrooms? And so, you know, that's one of the things on my, you know, exit interview, so to speak, of students. And they're like, I met people in this class and it was, you know, I created people to study with. And I would have never 23 years ago thought that was a success. But now I'm like, good for you.
I resonate with that. I love to see friendships grow. And in fact, I have one special case where in my positive psychology class, I watched a young couple fall in love.
Aww.
And they got married, and it was just so precious to observe that journey. I'm an academic, of course, but the romantic person in me was just, my heart was swelling. Yeah, so I think recognizing the potential that our classes have for enriching students' lives far beyond whatever the content we're teaching is pretty important. And I love the fact that you're more enthusiastic now, because that's so rare.
It is rare. That's what I was just thinking. It is
very rare.
As you were talking, I was like, where does this optimism come from, or this comfort in this new normal for you?
I don't know. I don't know. I think it probably is like every semester I'm like, oh, this is going to be fun. Like, what are we going to do? Or what are we going to learn? Or, I mean, I guess I continue to learn so much from my students. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, just a funny example. I had a student come in my office and we're talking about research or whatever. And she's like, you know, I need to ask my friend Kim. And I'm thinking like, Kim is a real person, you know? So she's like, no, like my soulmate friend is Kim Kardashian. Okay. And so this starts this whole conversation of like, why are you and Kim tight? Like, have you ever met Kim? And she's like, but you know, everything I do, I really think about what would Kim do? And so obviously now I'm fascinated by parasocial relationships. Like, how and why and how does this work? And then that led to a conversation with another student about cosmetic procedures. And so now I have an honor student doing parasocial relationships and cosmetic procedures, because your friends aren't really, maybe they are, maybe they aren't having their butt lifted, but people definitely are on TikTok. And if those are your friends, parasocial
your
friends,
peers,
you're like, I could have my butt lifted too. So I learned so many things last year from my students, and they learned things from me as well, I hope. But I just enjoy that every single year.
Does it scare you at all that Kim was the target person for this person's self-evaluation and judgment?
I don't know that I think that maybe, okay, so this kind of ages me a little bit, but I think maybe for some of these college students, it definitely has judgment, but maybe for some of them, it doesn't have the same judgment. If that is a friendship, like if my friend looks great and Jane, you look great, like I don't feel like necessarily judged if you're like, Monica, that haircut's not your best. You know, I'm like, oh, that's my friend telling me that. And I'm so happy for my friend. So it's possible that their relationships with these people are not necessarily always in that kind of.
I was just reflecting on more recent research that says depression in young adults is significantly increasing, and pointing to one potential factor is, of course, access to social media and inevitable social comparisons. So your student has this lovely relationship with Kim Kardashian, but isn't there some potential there for that to cause some harm?
Well, I love that you led with that, because my other honor student, of which I had 3 this semester, was convinced that TikTok was bad for everyone.
Okay.
Now, granted, she definitely had an unhealthy relationship with TikTok and eating disorders. But I use this because I use metaphors. Okay, so I use the one of haunted houses because she loves haunted houses. I find them petrifying. I have no desire to ever be in a haunted house, but I'm not running around all of October saying we shouldn't have haunted houses. They're horrible things because she loves them. And, so we kind of compromised. And we said, what kind of individual difference might impact how TikTok impacts people, social comparison. And sure enough, we found a lovely moderating effect that it didn't matter how much they were on TikTok. It didn't matter how many hours. And we had, 200 plus students who were on TikTok every day. But for those students who scored high in general social comparison, so not even appearance specific, but general social comparison, and reported high engagement in high engagement in TikTok, were those students with, symptoms of eating disorders.
That is interesting.
So that's really hopeful to me. I've been watching some of the research come out too, some of the research by, let's see, Jean Twenge is doing a lot of stuff right now. Jonathan Haidt, they have a blog that they're putting out right now called Tower of Babel, I think, where they're looking at this exact question. But a lot of it is very doomsday. It makes it fun to read, actually. I mean, it's awful. It's awful, but
it's awful, but it's fun.
Yeah. Well, and as a parent of a 11-year-old who she's going into these years, it's very important to me that I understand this, but I love to hear that there are other factors. There's individual differences. And, by the way, one of the themes of psychology and, that we want our students to really understand. So, I'm glad you could talk to or find that with your student, or that your student could find it for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think it is. When you teach personality, it starts to, you start to think about, can we make these generalizations that social media is terrible for everyone? Maybe it's probably not great, but I don't think it's going anywhere. So really, what are our vulnerable populations, and how can we look to address or mitigate or, prevent issues, with vulnerable populations?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Yeah. Let me change directions a little bit, because you mentioned that you took over the peer advising enterprise, and that peer advising model has always represented for me just great innovation. And I'm wondering, can you talk a little bit about that? Because it solves so many problems for departments, especially where regular advising is slipshod or not great. And when I'm doing program reviews, even when departments are terrific, the one area that tends to show up where students' dissatisfaction is the largest is advising quality. I suspect that would not be the case here, that students would be, okay, so I might be wrong based on your facial expression, but can you at least talk about that model in case it's a good solution for departments that might be looking for ways to improve advising?
Sure. I love peer advising. And I think I've always been like not a front row fan, but like in the middle tier fan of peer advising. Like, I was like, oh, that's good. It's nice to have. But in my position now, as peer advising has kind of evolved, and during COVID, it was an experience. I realized that maybe the value of peer advising is a little different than what I thought it was.
Okay.
And we may get back to kind of the original model of peer advising. So we have an office here in Miller Hall for peer advising. They hold office hours, and students can come in at any point after we open. And the idea is that we have students that are trained in helping students navigate our curriculum, which is not necessarily easy. Finding research experiences or practicum experiences, learning how to navigate our career center, which has a new name and different procedures than it maybe had in the past. We do open houses, so admissions, when we have students visit. They, give tours around Miller, but talk about what it's like to be a psychology major. We do choices, which is after the students have been accepted, but maybe haven't paid their deposit. We do events, and they help with that. So it's a lot of kind of the front row facing parts. And I think that when I was a fan of peer advising, I was only seeing that part. But wow, as the person that runs peer advising, and when I say teach, it doesn't really even feel like the right word, but they provide so much knowledge to me about what it's like to be a student and what it's like to navigate the experience as a student. So we have Canvas notifications. We do not have like a massive CRM yet that's in place that uses maybe that kind of notifications that other schools may have. So we rely on email. It's amazing. Students tell me that they have like 5,000 emails they've never read. So they really help me understand just the magnitude of emails that students get. They help me understand why a student might or might not reach out for help. Just their experiences. So like every week's class is kind of like, here's the theme we're going to talk about. Here are aspects, and then tell me what's working and not working. And I gain so much more out of that experience.
Can you give a couple examples of themes that might dominate a specific class? What kind of theme would shape a course experience?
So I guess if we have to, probably the major theme of this last year was the theme of managing financial aid.
Oh.
So if you think of faculty and, we are not really always very knowledgeable about how financial aid works. We're sometimes indifferent to it, to be honest.
We don't even know what the tuition costs are.
We don't often know what it costs. Yeah. And there's a lot of things that faculty and registration do that impact students' financial aid. So if you're like, oh, you can be on my research team, I'll sign you up, but I don't get around to that until September, that's going to affect your aid bill. Just different things like the students are coming in with more credits. What does that mean about pacing yourself so that you are reaching the total credits at the right time? And who do they talk to? Well, if you go to financial aid, they say, see your advisor. If you see your advisor, sometimes we're just like, more is better. Oh, take more classes. Well, more may not be better. Depending on your financial aid status, it might not be in your benefit to take 21 credits one semester just because you can be in 3 labs, because that means you might be graduating a semester early and you didn't plan on it. So I think that was helping students pace their experience while not being completely, I guess my friend uses the endowment effect, where you have to have this class, because we still have a lot of demand for our classes. So if you're like, I want a capstone class with this person, there's 12 seats in that, I can't guarantee you're going to get that class. So how do you plan 4 years or 3 years or 2 years while being flexible about what that is? And I think in peer advising, that was really helpful. We had some students that got everything they wanted and students that, only got one of the classes they wanted. And so hearing that from that experience was really valuable. Okay.
And capstone classes, the limit is 12?
Yeah,
that is so amazing.
We bumped it up this semester. Like in the spring, we bump it up to 14, 15. But
I think when I was here, it was 15.
No, it was 12.
Really?
Yeah, it's been 12 since I've been here.
Okay, well, I thought it was 15.
No, okay. 12. Because the seminar room only seats 12. So when we go, we have to move classrooms. It's a big deal.
I brought the JMU model to my department, and so we do capstones, but our cap is 20. Yeah. And it's more taxing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always figured it was like 12 because you had 12 weeks. I mean, you have a 15-week class, but you have 12, and a lot of the models are a student presents and creates discussion and runs the show.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm interested in that. So talk to me a little more about how you approach a 12-person class versus how large is your largest class that you
80
teach?
some.
80. So what's your mindset going into a small class? And does it pour over? Do you do things in the small class that you think I need to scale that because it worked really well here? I'd like to scale it up for an 80-person class, or are they just different beasts?
Different creatures.
No, they're just they're entirely different creatures, but it's they have different forms and function. So I think what makes the capstone so much fun, and I taught one recently, is that you basically have a group of seniors. So whether they're graduating exactly that semester or not, and usually our students, our highest demand is in the spring. So it's so fun because they're just trying to figure out, like some of them know what they're doing, but for the most part they don't. And so you can really kind of create that community of the purpose of the capstone in my mind is that we're going to, the topics are all different, but we're going to make sure at the end of the semester that you can write, that you can discuss, you can read original research, and you can present, and you can just, in an area that you're an expert, you can pretend to talk like a professional. And if I can get that out of you, then you can feel the confidence going into whatever you're going to do that we prepared you.
What was your theme when you taught capstone?
It's addictive behaviors. Mm-hmm. So every student in the class picks a different addictive behavior. So it's kind of a jigsaw model. Mm-hmm. And we cover commonalities across all, different types of addictions. But the students really become, experts in something that they've selected. And so every class, bring their point of view from their addiction to the class, and it kind of helps shape it. Now, it does get kind of crazy when you're like, sometimes I forget their names, and I'm just thinking like, that's, meth student. So you have to hold that back. But, once we learn names, it gets easier. But, they really enjoy it. And the nice thing about it, I think, which is why I've always taught my capstone like this for a million years, is that it's one of those times where you can create a student environment where they want each other to come because they're curious about what that person's going to bring to the contribution. So if you're not there, I always say, we're going to talk about you, because we're going to be like, what would Ashley say about heroin? If you're not there, because no one else is doing that for you. You are the only person, in your addiction. So students have been fabulous. Even when they're on job interviews, we've had them that was back in the day, like Skype in from Florida or wherever they were, just so they could present their part of, the class. And we look at all the aspects of addiction, like why would you do it? Factors like that, prevention. And then the papers that they write, there's a research, after you review all of this, do you think is the most pressing research idea? But also, what do you think the general population should know about your addiction? So it gives them a little bit of public writing as well as professional writing.
And it's nicely practical.
Oh, yeah.
It's just practical.
And then you start class with, hey, do you know the graduation gowns are available now? Please get them. Or the career fair if you missed it. So you have that little piece of advising that you can't have in your other classes.
Yeah, so I know the classes are different. The students are different. Context is different. But you are the same person. So in your 80-person class, where does that engagement, the way you run that seminar class, how do you bring that kind of engagement into your larger classes? Or maybe just tell us what you do in your larger classes. I'm sure
especially
you'll
maybe
shine.
From the standpoint of how do you make sure your 80-person class has a sense of community? What do you do?
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, I can totally do that. I think about that a lot. So, because it used to be 70 and maybe I had 60 students, and now every seat in that room will be full, just because our major has grown and those kinds of things.
How many majors?
We had over 1,300
a
little bit ago. We're down to like 1,250.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a lot. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're a small college. So, we really start the first day with like, why are we all here and what's going on? And I feel like in COVID, a lot of us resorted to a lot of kind of punishment system. I don't know, that's not the right word. Accountability.
No, I think it might be the right word.
Accountability, like aspects of like, I'm going to take attendance. And I have never been an attendance person. I am always like, you're a college student, come if you want to come. And so I use this great, but I talk about the fact that I want you signed up for personality. In essence, you signed up because you want to learn this. And so I can tell them to think about it as a concert ticket, right? So you signed up for the personality concert series, in essence. Now, here's what you can do. You can buy the CD and you can listen to it, and you'll know the music just as well as if you come to lecture. But there'll be some things in lecture that I talk about that won't be on the CD, granted, and they might be on the exam. But you can really have a choice. Like, I would like you to be here, and I'm going to make this as fun and entertaining and, interactive as possible. But this is not the only way to get the material. Flat out, I tell them that. And then, I say we're going to start class with the things I think are most relevant for you. And so we don't just start the, class with Freud, which is what's the first in my book. We start with learning goals. And then we talk about, mindset. And then we do a little bit of talking about self-determination theory and why I structured the class to have autonomy and those kinds of things so that you can think about, are you motivated to come to class? Why? Is it external?
I love that.
Is it internal? So that first, there's a lot for them to discuss and to think about themselves and, to share and kind of create that community. And then I'm not going to lie. Every time they come to class at the beginning, I reinforce them. It's like potty training someone. Here's an M&M. Like, you come to class. I'm like, guess what? I'm so glad you came. It's so nice outside. Everybody gets 1 extra credit point.
Oh, do you reinforce? I was thinking you were reinforcing with M&Ms.
No, there's 80 of them.
That'd be a lot of M&Ms.
Sad. No, I'm just like, it's an extra credit point for coming to class today, just for fun.
Okay. And that's not predictable. So
no, gosh,
whenever you feel like you want to, would you be more inclined to reinforce classes that are full or students that come when there are a lot of absences?
No, I don't even think I think that clearly.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's usually there's an activity that they're doing that I'm like, you guys took that activity so well, like 1 point for you. So it's not like, oh, hey, you came to class, you get a point. Like, it's embedded in things.
And is it the case that this may be a reflection of my own strategy in using extra credit points? Students will kill for extra credit points when, in fact, they don't really tend to influence grades at all.
No.
Just for a minority of...
It's 1 point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
But there's just something magical about it.
It is. There's something like magical about it. And, I am acknowledging their effort. Mm-hmm. And sometimes, and I do a lot of like, okay, so everybody, what's your learning goal today? And they don't have one. I'm like, find one. Like, okay, what are we talking about today before I start? Like, things like that. And, they'll pipe up or whatever. And I'll be like, that's really good. You just made me happy, extra credit point around, So like sprinkles on cupcakes.
I'm impressed with that.
Yeah. So I have pretty good attendance. They come. They don't know what to expect other than they are supposed to, do the reading. And I have enough in-class activities that they, want. And sometimes I'll start class with being like, find somebody that read something this week. If you didn't, like before you come, like for the first 5 minutes of class, I'll be like, okay, if you read and you want to sell it, not sell it, but you want to share that with other people. And then that gives me an opportunity to talk about community. Like, every one of us has shown up for a faculty meeting and gone, I didn't read the notes before I got here. Can you help me? And I said, this is the kind of behavior that you're going to have forever. How do you navigate that? And and I make it very clear, like, you can all get A's. It's fine with me. Help each other, because you're going to learn more when you help other people. And don't be afraid to ask for help.
Those are great examples.
Yeah. Yeah. You must take time out of content in order to build community in those ways.
Not necessarily. I mean, I think a lot of times I do a lot of different strange and they're not strange. I do a lot of different activities. I reinvent the course every 5 years or so. So I used to have service learning, I think, back when you were there. Then I went through this whole questioning phase where, like, how to get students to ask questions. So I think it was I think Ashton Trice inspired a little bit of this for me. I was like, what do they want me to talk about? And realizing that they didn't even really have a thought was kind of frightening for me. So it was like, what do you want to learn today? Imagine that I'm only going to tell you what you ask me about. And that was kind of so they would like have to write down their questions or work with other people to ask questions. And that was kind of fun, but it was kind of,
you were going to say it was kind of depressing.
I was going to say it was kind of depressing, but then I think that it was just more informative for me that when my general inclination in a lot of things is you have to build it from the ground up. You can't just expect people, I think we've talked about this a long time ago, to be interdisciplinary if they don't know their discipline. You can't ask people to ask questions if they're just not even knowledgeable enough to ask the question. And and there's a lot of vulnerability in asking that question if they don't know what they're talking about. And I think that insecurity is a big part of this community issue, or that I'm trying to help them overcome some of their insecurities to ask questions. So then that really helped me reframe it to how can I build them up then to be able to ask questions. So the question project went, and the project that I have right now is a psychobiography project.
Okay.
Which I love in part because it's real. So you can talk about that people do write psychobiographies, that they publish them. And basically I want them to take a person that they care about, a famous person that they can find resources for, and then interpret their behavior from the major concepts of personality. So from a social cognitive perspective, or from a trait perspective, or from a psychoanalytic perspective, or a psychodynamic perspective. And that's their final project in the class. So as we go through it, we can be like, okay, who are you, writing
Who's your
about?
target?
Who's your target?
Yeah.
And so that's fascinating who they pick. And then, they talk to one another and they know each other's target. And then we have a little brainstorming session. So I get to see that curiosity there happening and thinking about what, but not necessarily where it's different than when they were asking me about content.
I think regardless of the class that you're teaching, you are scratching an itch that students don't even know they have, which is that connectedness. They're autonomous. They're embedded in their phones. They've lost, in many cases, the ability to make strong social connections. And so when they get in a class that is intentional about that, I think that would explain why you don't have attendance problems. I think while students may not recognize necessarily that they were missing something, I think you're satisfying something that they've been missing.
No, I think they know it. I mean, I think so? They come to class, absolutely, to hear from one another or to see one another. I mean, I think, just to even see what I'm going to talk about in any given day, I think that they like that.
I also hear a theme of, and you mentioned it in this class, that there's an autonomy that you want to give your students a sense of ownership of their learning process. And I heard it also in the seminar description. You're allowing them to choose things that immediately relate to their life, and then you're using that. It's like your secret weapon of using something they're interested in to teach them the content. And people have done that before, but I think when you explain it, there's something so. It comes really naturally from you. Some of us, I think, tried to do it. I'm going to give my students more autonomy, but it sounds like you approach learning with, well, of course they need autonomy and they need to invest themselves into this, because somebody could come and teach that personality course from cover to cover, right? And,
oh, yeah.
Yeah. And there's many ways to do it. Can you just talk about the way that you see students involved? And I think you have already, but in the learning process?
So involved in the.
Can you
clarify that?
Sorry, me too.
How do you approach when you're designing a course? How are you taking students into consideration? Because I think that some people teaching the same course wouldn't take the students into consideration. They take the content into consideration, the outcomes into consideration. But you can do that without really trying to engage students. So why is it important for you to engage students? And what I'm getting at is that I hear something that does not come naturally to everybody, and maybe myself included, but it seems to come pretty naturally to you, the way that you think about students, the way that you value students.
I think you're also reflecting the bias that's sometimes captured as, are you a sage on the stage or a guide on the side? That so many faculty are super comfortable being the sage on the stage. I've got the content. I'm going to spoon feed you the content. You're going to spoon feed it back to me on an exam, and we call it a grade. Your approach is definitely guide on the side. Mm-hmm. And there is an empowerment that is really natural in the way you're approaching what you're doing with students. And so how intentional when you sit down to build your syllabus, is it students first? Is it content first? How do you make that infusion? It may just be so natural that it's hard to capture.
And I hate the, sage on the stage.
I hate it too, but
I hate the guide on the side because I'm neither one. I'm definitely not on the side, and I'm definitely not always on the stage.
Okay.
I think that...
Did you want to come up with a new metaphor that we could use?
I'm going to tell you the one I used.
All right.
Yeah,
well,
of course.
I should have known you'd have one.
I have one.
Yeah.
And I haven't
Silly
talked about
me.
farming yet. Anyway.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
Yeah, we will, I'm sure. I think about it as, in essence, if I was going to be a musician, which I know is near and dear to your heart, I would want people to sing my songs with me, sing them alone, or even sing them in a different way. So, so to me, the whole experience is if I can get them to eat and breathe and think about personality psychology and what would this person think about if they saw this behavior? How would this person think, or this theorist or this aspect really, think about the behavior from that standpoint? To me, that's so cool. So when they can kind of be like, hey, this seems like this, I'm like, yes. But part of that is you have to give them that structure. And I think the other part is you have to make them curious. So I do think I care about content, but I do think I select it in a way that I think is relevant for students today in 2023. And I say that all the time. I'm like, this is important for you in 2023 because it's going to change. This is still relevant in 2023. And here's the research article that talks about it. So almost every major component, I have like, here's what current research is doing. And I used to talk about it in a PowerPoint slide, like, a little reference. And I realized that was stupid because they don't read it. But I actually walk around with the article in my hand and I flop it on my document camera. And I'm like, see, I didn't make this up. People are doing this. If you like this content today, you can go and learn more about this. People are still curious about this. And so I think that is that's like the second part of it is like, I want you to take this and do something with it in the future.
Yeah. You want them to be able to have the learning be meaningful enough that it's going to make a difference in their lives after.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My podcast partner, Eric, years ago, he had this idea to take at that point, a camcorder, but to go and watch people teach in their classrooms. And the desire I have right now is to see you in your classroom because I would love to watch you with your students. I think it's still a great idea. And maybe there is something out. I mean, now it's so easy to capture. I mean, you need student permission and all that, but it's so easy to capture ourselves in our classroom with phones. And maybe there's a project out there for somebody to do that so that we could see each other. I think part of the problem with the question I was just thinking about a few minutes ago about how my question just wouldn't come out clearly. I think I was asking you how you do what you do, but I think it's pretty close. It's so close to you. You probably, you maybe don't even know it.
I probably don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know. I thought that musician metaphor captured it really
great.
well. Yeah.
Now, what about farming?
Oh, well, I'm a good farm kid still. I think, I guess I'll pull in farming because Jane will find this funny and she maybe doesn't know. So in COVID, what happened was our classes basically stopped at spring break, right? And we went home. And I do have this I teach in the morning. I often have a cup of coffee. I do start class with random things that, happen in the world and, conversations just at a kind of a level of good morning. How's everybody? What's the train a problem? Or, things like that. So I didn't, there was no guidance really to any of us as far as what we should do. So I created a YouTube channel. And it was Coffee with Monica. And I stood in my yard with my, I got a little stick camera because that's what we all did in COVID. And I had my little yellow cup of coffee, and I just talked to them like I did before and said, like, here's the things you're going to read about in your textbook. And here are some real life examples of some of the things that I could find. So we did like major like farm tours of things and took students, on adventures in the tractor or, with baby sheep, and trying to make it like hello. And I, they were very short. They were little snippets. Like my husband, built this bar for my daughter who was a gymnast, which that was, COVID terribleness. But like, we talk about practicing things and self-efficacy to jump on this metal bar that your dad maybe created safely, maybe not, But probably the funniest one was that my kids kind of convinced me, and it was March, it was cold. So we filled our swimming pool. And when you talk about the big 5 personality traits, I'm from Iowa, so I learned it as canoe because we only could see a canoe. I'd never seen the ocean. But, in the East Coast, we learn it as ocean. So I literally put a kayak in my swimming pool, and I sat in it, and I said, this is the 2A to learn about, the big 5, ocean, which would be my pool, or kayak, the canoe. And I'm literally sitting in this, and they thought it was hilarious. And little did I know that they were watching these with their parents, with everyone waiting for
you crazy Monica,
my next,
the Monica tour,
Monica YouTube video to occur. They're so humiliating to look at now. But I do show my students like a snapshot of that pool one. But that was that way to keep the community going. Mm-hmm. And then they laughed. And then we had a discussion post about where do you see some of these concepts? Like, where do you see self-efficacy? And we were towards the end of the semester where it's easier to do that.
You have such good examples.
Your hooks are unbelievable for learning, for getting students involved in the learning process. Like, I think that's one of the things that is a gift to your students. And to come into a class session or online, and I just feel like it's definitely your personality. I don't know you very well, but Jane explained to me that you're a fun person, and funny person, and
extremely.
Yeah. And so the authenticity that you bring even to those videos or to the first 5 minutes that you think about, how am I going to hook my students today, is so natural to who you are. But, I'm inspired to go to I'm on sabbatical right now. So I haven't been in the classroom in years now, because of COVID, but, I'll go back in September. And, one of the things that I really want to do, which is not natural to me, is hook student learning. And if we can't do it as psychology teachers, right? There's a problem.
Yeah.
Some of us have to overcome, though, our maybe seriousness or the way that we approach teaching, to get to this fun level if we really want to engage students and earn their trust. And I think that's what you did. Mm-hmm. They're sharing it with their parents.
I think this is such a good example of how learning doesn't have to be deadly, too. And I think so many students experience a significant part of what they go through in college as just pure drudge. And so when they encounter someone who knows how to speak to their lives in the way that you're talking about, it's clear that that's going to be pretty magical. Now, I know we're probably running out of time, but I want to ask one question, which is, can you help explain the dilemma of gifted teachers who then decide to become administrators? Because a good chunk of your professional time is taken up managing challenges within the psych department as the assistant chair, right?
Yeah.
So why'd you do that?
Oh, why? Well, you know why I probably did it, because the department head was one of my best friends, and I'm a yes person. So you weren't really keen to do it. You did it as a favor to someone. Is that what you're saying? No, that seems awful.
It might be awful, but was it true?
No, I don't like to think about it like that. I think that when there's a challenge and I think that it looks entertaining, I'll do it.
Yeah.
So, I always laugh. The way that I got on the assessment committee was just that I was in my office and I was like, okay, well, that sounds like fun. And then when one of my dearest friends became the department head, I already, helped this person in many ways. I'm like, oh, sure, I'll just help you in a different office in that way. And so, now I have the nice part of the job in that I work with students. I work with helping students, especially those students that have had trouble navigating the college experience for a wide variety of ways.
So you've also managed to be student-centered.
Oh, completely.
In your administrative.
Yeah, mine. If it has to do with faculty, I'm out for the most part.
So you do not aspire, for example, to become a chair?
Oh, gosh, no, never.
Gosh, no. Okay.
Ever, no. Herding cats. No, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, no. I mean, I like faculty. They're some of my dearest friends, and I want to help them all be successful. And so, I find that part helpful. But no, my passion really lies in helping the students. And sometimes I think it is a little bit of the piece of, I have a 2-year-old granddaughter, so I'll use that. Oh, yes. And tomorrow, you can cut this, but tomorrow my son and his wife are having twin boys.
Oh my gosh.
C-section tomorrow.
Congratulations.
Yeah, I'm so excited.
Wow.
It's going to be wild. Whoo, what do you do with 3? Anyway, but my granddaughter is in the back seat and she's telling me something and I clearly don't know what she's saying. But what that means is she's seeing the world through her 2-year-old eyes, and it is my job to figure out what that means in my position. And so sometimes that's how I feel in my administrative job. I have a student who's trying to tell me why they didn't do what they did, or why they didn't read the email, or what classes they took in what order or whatever. And I have to be like, okay, let me listen to you and figure out how I can help you. And that takes an administrative position because, it's very easy to get lost. Even good advisors, they don't often have the ability to be like, okay, it's clearly something bad happened here and I'm going to get you in this class, or I'm going to help you make this connection with this person, or I'm going to call the registrar right now and be like, where did this class go, or whatever. And so I like that, helping students not get lost.
And my understanding is you have a new department head?
I do have a new department
And so
head.
How's that transition going for you?
Well, so Kevin left. We had an interim department head, and now we have a new department head. I think it's fun and challenging, and I am excited for somebody who wants to see our department and see where it can go. I'm always sensitive to the fact that I've been here a long time and there's a lot of different ways to do things. So I'm excited to see different ways to do things, because I know that you can always go back, but you can't go forward if you haven't tried something different, so I find it fun.
It's not a surprise that you'd be optimistic about what's coming.
Probably not.
Yeah,
no.
probably not.
Yeah.
Was this one of the reasons you hired her?
I remember your interview. I do. That there was a kind of freshness and originality about you that made you a really compelling candidate. That came through. Also, the farm thing came through.
Oh yeah.
And as someone from the Midwest, I resonated with that. And I have to share with you that I've borrowed one of your lines and used it a lot, which is the reference that people make about silos.
Oh, yes.
In higher education, we're all in silos. And the first time I ever heard this, Monica said, I'm a farm girl, and on farms, silos are a good thing.
Yeah, what else are you going to do? Just put your corn on the ground?
Yeah.
And you got to cover it. And silos are not as practical as they used to be. Now we use bins, in case you want to know. But yeah, you don't just want to leave it all out there for the birds to crap in it.
Well, what I love about that is people have gotten so conditioned to use silos as negative that when you say that, they get a look on their face like, what? What, silos are a good thing? Now I have to rethink what I've just said, right? Yeah. And so thank you for that.
And maybe rethink what I believe, or how I'm perpetuating it.
Even better.
Yeah. Monica, thank you so much for taking the time to do this today. It was really great to hear from you about your teaching, and wish you the best of luck here at JMU. Now, 23 years into your career here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks.
Thank you.